Good morning and welcome to today's Coffee with Craig, where we talk about all things firearms, firearms policy, politics, culture, media, you name it. We're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. So please take a moment, like and share the program so that your friends can know where the conversation is taking place. And if you haven't already done so, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook as well as on Twitter and Instagram. In the case of YouTube and Facebook, make sure you hit the notification button. That way you'll get notifications as soon as we go live, and you can participate in the live chat as the program is taking place. Also, want to encourage you, if you haven't already done so, please visit fpcgear.com. It's a great way to support the organization, as well as find all of your cool pro-2A swag. We're talking t-shirts, we're talking coffee mugs, we're talking hoodies, tank tops, stuff for the ladies, whether it's for your home or for your office, or, hey, just so that you can go and be out and about. All of it is right there. And the best part about it is every dollar that you spend goes right back into the fight for our right to keep and bear arms. So you can support the Second Amendment and you can look good doing it. That's fpcgear.com. All right, there's no mystery that there is, or no secret that there is a presidential election that is taking place. And this presidential election, like probably just about like every other, is going to send a very, very clear message in terms of who is elected about the direction to a certain degree of where we want to go as a country, in particular when it comes to our right to keep and bear arms. Now, you all are all familiar with who our current president is, President Donald J. Trump, who has proclaimed himself to be the most pro-Second Amendment president ever. He said it before he ran. He said that he would do that. He said he would do more than any other president to support the Second Amendment. And he has said it while he is now campaigning for re-election that he has thus far been the most pro-Second Amendment president ever. A couple of years ago, halfway through his term, we did an episode of Coffee with Craig where we took a look at his record to determine whether or not he was, in fact, pro-2A. Not whether or not he was the most pro-2A, but as to whether or not, basically take a look at what he's done for the Second Amendment so that you can judge for yourself. Because, Firearms Policy Coalition, we don't endorse candidates, but we do make it a point to point out their record. And so that's what we wanted to do here in Is Donald Trump the most pro-2A president ever? Part 2. Okay, so let's get into Mr. Trump's record. Okay, so the first thing that I think it's important to understand about Donald Trump is that you have to measure him in two different ways. One, you have to measure him by what he says, and then secondly, you have to measure him by what he does. Because, let's just be honest. The two are not always consistent, and the odd thing about that is that's not necessarily a bad thing. Right? I hate to say it, but not. But let's take a look at some of these things. So, let's start off with his position on red flag laws. And this kind of falls under the definition of things that he has said, positions that he has taken when it comes to a number of issues. Now, for those of you who do not know what red flag laws are, where have you been? I have no idea what rock you've been hiding under, but I'll give you a brief explanation. It's where an individual who you may or may not know can go to a judge and say that you are a danger to yourself or others, and then bam, you lose your gun rights, you lose your guns, and then you have to go to court and you are now guilty until proven innocent and prove that you are not a danger to yourself or others in order to get your gun rights back. President Trump, let's just say his position on red flag laws is not exactly consistent with what we believe to be should be when it comes to the Second Amendment.
Well, in the category, you've spoken about it, Mr. President, gun violence restraining orders. They're called. California actually has a version of this. And I think in your meeting with governors earlier this week, individually and as a group, we spoke about states taking steps. But the focus is to literally give families and give local law enforcement additional tools if an individual is reported to be a potential danger to themselves or others. Allow due process so that no one's rights are trampled, but the ability to go to court, obtain an order, and then collect not only the firearms but any weapons in the possession
Or
of that
might
individual.
take the firearms first and then go to court, because that's another system, because a lot of times, by the time you go to court, it takes so long to go to court, to get the due process procedures. I like taking the guns early.
I like taking the guns early. Yeah, that doesn't exactly sound like the sort of words that you would want to hear coming from the mouth of the most pro-2A president ever. Once again, folks, don't get mad at me. If you're a Trump supporter, don't get mad at me. I'm just telling you what he has said. We're just pointing out his record. That's it. So don't get mad at me. I didn't say that. Wait, he did. He said that. Anyway, now, mind you, I will say this. He hasn't really done anything in regards to red flag laws. He hasn't signed any executive orders, and no legislation's made it to his desk. So he hasn't really done anything on red flag laws, but he has taken the position that, due process should come after your guns have been taken away, after your rights have been taken away. So that's problematic at best, right? Right. Well, there wasn't just that. There also had to do with the issue of bump stocks. This is an area where the president actually wound up doing something. He actually directed his Department of Justice to redefine machine guns to include bump stocks. Now, my issue with that, quite frankly, is that machine guns are actually defined in law by Congress, in statute. And I'm having a hard time, but then again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm having a hard time figuring out, well, how can they redefine something that's defined in law? How can you do that? I mean, that's normally done in the, legislative branch. That's usually how it works. But he had his ATF do it and summarily then banned bump stocks, and FPC was right there in the midst of the court fight, fighting the Trump administration, still there, fighting to, because not for this reason. If we're going to allow this president to ban an item that we may or may not like, what's to keep future administrations or even this administration from doing the exact same thing to ban items that we don't like, or that we do like, or that we do believe in, or that we do believe are core to our Second Amendment. There's absolutely nothing keeping them from doing that. Now, he did this kind of, or at least this conversation, this idea came up in a flurry of ideas where he was talking about a number of different things, including things like enhanced background checks and restricting the ability of law-abiding citizens from the age of 18 to 20 to be able to own or possess firearms for self-defense. And here's an example of one of those verbal flurries.
We'll tell you background checks. I've called many senators last night, many congressmen, and Jeff and Pam and everybody in this room. I can tell you, Curtis, they're into doing background checks that they wouldn't be thinking about maybe 2 weeks ago. We're going to do strong background checks. We're going to work on getting the age up to 21 instead of 18. We're getting rid of the bump stocks, and we're.
So, as you can see here, folks, there are definitely some problematic things. But like I said, the interesting thing about it is that you look at it, nothing's happened in regards to the age of being able to purchase a firearm, at least not at the federal level. And nothing's happened in terms of enhanced background checks. But as I said before, bump stocks have been taken. And like I said earlier, when we start getting into items that we, letting them ban items that we don't really care about, and trying to stop even that, because he's going to come back and try and come after an item that we do care about. One such example is suppressors. Now, after a shooting, one of the president was once asked, well, what do you feel about suppressors? Or they asked him about silencers, and he had a response for that. And here was his response. He said, our response: Who cares about bump stocks anyway? It says the suspect in Virginia Beach shooting used a silencer on his weapon. Do you believe that silencers should be restricted? The president's answer was, I don't like them at all. So it's important for you to see that, once again, here's an item that he doesn't like, that the president unfortunately decided that he was going to. I mean, he hasn't decided he's going to ban them yet, but we don't know whether or not he will or he won't. And once again, that goes back to things he says and things he does. Now, the next one is one that is also of concern. You guys all know this guy. This is William Barr. This is our Attorney General. I know a lot of you like William Barr. There's a lot to like about William Barr because, I mean, he's been, in my opinion, an effective Attorney General thus far, except there's only one really big problem with him, and that is, and this is oftentimes the dichotomy that we wind up dealing with as, you know, if you are right of center, is, you know, when it comes to law enforcement being pro-security versus pro-liberty, and not everyone who deals with law enforcement issues comes down on the side of pro-liberty. When I say pro-liberty, I'm specifically meaning the right to keep and bear arms and the belief that, that it's within reason to restrict those rights if they believe that you are protecting, if they believe that they are protecting us from ourselves. Here's some statements that William Barr made during his confirmation hearing that, you know, leads one to believe that, he probably falls more on the security side than on the liberty side.
And so there's no question under Heller that the right to have weapons is firearms is protected under the Second Amendment and is a personal right. At the same time, there's room for reasonable regulation. And, you know, from my standpoint, what I would look for is, in assessing a regulation, is what's the burden on law-abiding people, and is it proportionate to whatever benefit in terms of safety and effectiveness will be conferred. I think that the problem of our time is to get an effective system in place that can keep dangerous firearms out of the hands of mentally ill people. That should be priority number one, and it's going to take some hard work, and we need to get on top of the problem. We need to come up with agreed to standards that are prohibitors of people who are mentally ill. We have to put the resources in to get the system built up the way we did many years ago on the felon records and so forth. We have to get the system working, and as I say, it's sort of piecemeal a little bit right now. We need to really get some energy behind it and get it done, and I also think we need to push along the ERPOs so that we have these red flag laws to supplement the use of the background check to find out if someone has some mental disturbance. This is the single most important thing I think we can do in the gun control area to stop these massacres from happening in the first place.
Okay, so let's just break that down just a little bit. So number one, I don't recall anywhere in the Second Amendment saying anything about reasonable restrictions. I do, however, recall shall not be infringed. That's the one thing that I do fundamentally understand. And, you know, his whole thing is of, well, you know, it all depends on what the burden on the individual is. Well, if you're going to promote something that is going to allow someone to not to have their rights taken away before they get their day in court, no, that's not due process. Now, when he testified in his hearing to be Attorney General previously, because this is his second time, he actually had testified that he was in favor of things like extended extended waiting periods, as well as a complete ban on semi-automatic firearms. So, forgive me, you may like him on some stuff, but I just tell you right now, not a pro-Second Amendment selection for Attorney General. Sorry, don't know what to tell you on that one. But I think it is important to look at some of the things, look at these things kind of in totality of things that he has said. And because like I said before, a lot of times the biggest issue is that he says stuff. Not as much what he does, but it's the stuff that he says that really kind of... So let's take a look at some of that stuff. All right, so first of all, take the guns first, due process later. We already saw that one. We already know about that one, but we also know that's not one that he has acted on. Stronger background checks. Once again, already went over that one, but we also know he hasn't really acted on that. Raise the age to buy a gun to 21. Once again, all talk, no action. And he doesn't like suppressors. Once again, made a comment, but hadn't really done anything on that particular item. And then we will ban bump stocks. And we know that of all of those, the only one that he's actually implemented was will ban bump stocks. So that's that's where the statements are that he's done. But let's also take a look at not just the statements that anti-2 statements, but that he's made. But let's talk about the promises that he made during his campaign, or that he would do. National concealed carry reciprocity. We haven't seen anything. In fact, since he's been elected, we haven't even really heard much from the president on national concealed carry reciprocity. And that's been really disappointing. And I realize that's something that largely has to come from Congress. And I realize the House passed something and the Senate hasn't. But the fact that we haven't heard much from the president on it is disappointing to me. End gun-free school zones, as well as gun-free zones on military bases. We haven't seen any action on that. Now, I don't know if it's necessarily required to go through Congress to allow to end gun-free zones on military bases, but I do know it has to go through Congress to deal with schools. And once again, we haven't seen a whole lot of movement on either of those. And then there was reversing President Obama's executive order, taking guns from some Social Security recipients. Now, on that, you folks may or may not remember, there was an Obama-era executive order that if individuals who received Social Security, if you had someone to help you with your finances, meaning if you signed over and had someone else handling your finances for you, you would lose your rights, your right to keep and bear arms, because they figured, well, if you can't handle your checkbook, if you're not mentally enough together to handle your checkbook, then you shouldn't be handling a firearm. Well, you and I both know that's a bunch of hooey. That's not a reason for someone to lose their rights. Sometimes it may just be easier. Maybe they use a computer program and the Social Security recipient doesn't. In any case, that is the one thing of all of these items. That is the one thing we can honestly say that President Trump actually did do something about, and he did reverse that because, well, it was easily within his power to do so. I think, though, it's important that when we look at President Trump, that we also measure him on the things that are important, the things that he has done to support the Second Amendment, not just the reversal of that particular executive order, but the most important thing. And the most important thing, I think, that we were looking to, or at least individuals who voted for Trump, who probably wouldn't have, was his judicial appointments. And talking about how important it is to appoint justices who have a liberty-minded, or at least who respect the Second Amendment, right? Whose position lines up with the right to keep and bear arms belonging to the people. And we can honestly say that from what we've seen so far, when one looks at their rulings and their writings, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, the two Supreme Court justices that have been selected by the president, do have a liberty-minded, or at least a consistent view of the Second Amendment and individuals' liberties that are provided, or not that are provided, that are included in the right to keep and bear arms. And that was something that I know a lot of gun owners, a lot of those of us in the 2A community, the reason why, in many cases, the only reason why they supported the president was because they wanted to make sure that justices were being appointed whose rulings and who understood the Constitution to mean that we actually have a right to keep and bear arms, and are not going to rewrite law from the bench in order to take those rights away. And we've seen it, over 100 justices have been appointed, or judges have been appointed, approved by the Senate for President Trump, and in many cases is remaking the federal judiciary to respect the Second Amendment. I mean, even in the Ninth Circuit, things have dramatically improved. It's still the Ninth. It's still the Ninth, but It is dramatically improved. And that's vitally important. And that's probably in and of itself enough to classify him as the most pro-2A president ever. I'm not going to say it does in my mind, but I can see where people would why people would believe that. And so that's where it is, folks. I mean, we need to take a look at it. We need to judge those who are running for office, any public office. We need to judge them based not just on their words, but we need to judge them based on their actions. And we also have to understand that, sometimes our choice is not between perfect and imperfect. Sometimes it's two imperfect candidates, and we have to choose the one that is the closest to where we would like them to be. And so as we go into this presidential election, those are the choices that you have. Those are the things that you need to decide. Is President Trump close enough to where you want to be, to where he should be your selection? Or are those or the individual who is running against him? Well, at this point, that would be Joe Biden. Is he closer to where you would like him to be than President Trump? That's for you to decide. But I encourage you, please take a look at the information that I've just provided with you. Take a look at both of their records, and then you decide, which president do you want? Which individual do you want as president defending your fundamental right to keep and bear arms? Just saying. And you may not want either one of them, but I promise you, one of them is going to be president come November 4th, or elected president November 4th. Just saying. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing the program, telling your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them, or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.